Hey there. It's Thursday afternoon, the day I talk marriage. I'm Leslie Dories, your marriage coach, owner of Foundations Coaching, and creator of the Hero Husband Project. And this week has been a bit unsettling for a lot of people. And can't go without talking about what's going on in the country with the murder of George Floyd and all of the protests that have come into it. And it runs right into the topic that I wanted to talk about today, which is the power of de escalation. And de escalation is not appeasement, it's not giving in, it's just taking into account the energy that is being put out both by you and by the people that you encounter, whether it's your partner, whether it's your child, whether it's somebody on the other side of this, of these events. It doesn't really matter. The power of de-escalation. Newton's third law of motion basically talks about, the wherever there's an action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. Meaning, if that object A is putting force onto object B, then object B is putting in equal force onto object A. And this is really what's going on. And this is really, sorry, what I mean by de-escalation, because de-escalation reduces the energy that you're putting into a situation. And when you head towards something and you have this idea of um, you want to have a conversation, you want to have an interaction with somebody, how you come to that interaction has a real big determiner on how that interaction is going to end up. If you come into that interaction with a lot of emotion, with a lot of anger, with a lot of hostility, and you're met by the same, it's only going to spiral out of control. And by no means do I think that people should not be upset about this situation. I absolutely 100% do believe that. But when you come to an interaction with your spouse and you're hot and you're angry and you go to your closet and you do the equivalent of pulling out your chain of armor and your sword and your shield and you're going to battle, guess what you're going to be met with? You are going to be met with somebody who is equally ready to go down for a fight. Now, by the way, there are some things that are worth fighting about, and we're seeing it all over the country. And I don't disagree with what people are fighting about. There has to be a stand, but how we take our stand matters. Part of it is turning all of that raw emotion into positive change, which is what's happening. And it can happen in your own relationship as well, but only when we are able to actually interact with each other. And this is something that I used to talk about as a theory until one of the few arguments that my husband and I have. Now, my husband rarely ever argues. He's this easygoing guy. Me, I got a hot, fast temper. And we were having an argument. And he finally just looks at me and he says, "I'm not going to do this anymore." And he stopped arguing with me. He de escalated. And I tried to keep going, but he stayed calm. And guess what? All of the hot air went out of my balloon. I saw firsthand, I experienced firsthand the power of de escalation. This is something that a lot of parents get into with their kids. Their kids are upset, their kids want something, their kids are hot, and once a parent spins out of control, guess what? They've lost control of the situation. That's what de-escalation allows. De-escalation allows for people to grab their emotions, to make decisions about what they want to do as opposed to just react. And it's a skill. This is what diplomats are trained in. Many people are trained in this, and ideally our police would be trained in this. And ideally, anytime you're going into a situation where emotions are hot, where people are hurt, one of the things that helps is to calm things down, Teachers know this. Teachers know how to get their students to be calm. I don't know if you've ever experienced it, but suddenly there'll be lots and lots of noise and whatever, and suddenly somebody starts talking like this. And everybody starts quieting down so that they can hear what the person is saying. That's a form of de-escalation. De-escalation does not mean you don't care about what's going on. De-escalation means that you know that there is a more productive way to handle it. Anger has its purpose. Anger has its power, and it can be used for good. And right now, there's a lot of anger that is being used for good. We want that. You want that. I want that. We want things to be better. But how you approach a situation, and by the way, it takes a tremendous amount of power, self-power, self-belief, self-confidence to de-escalate a situation. It's a lot easier to let a situation ramp up. I mean, and I go back to the pictures of the counter demonstrators, the people who were sitting at the lunch counters in Greensboro having hot coffee poured on them. If there's not a reason to escalate, that would be it. But they didn't. They maintained their calm and composure, which is, it just made everybody else, the other people, just look awful. And the same thing happens in your relationships. When you can de-escalate, it's not saying, de-escalation does not mean that you're okay with what's going on. All it means is, I'm not going to give my power over to you, because that's what happens when we get spun out, when situations get out of control. We all lose in those situations. And I'm not saying it's easy. It's not. We have to work at it. We have to become aware. And it isn't about not feeling. It really isn't. It's about not being out of control. And we can be passionate. We can be committed. We can be all those things, but we don't have to ramp up the volume. Okay? And it's a very, very powerful thing. And this is not to say that anybody who doesn't do it, there's anything wrong with you. It's not. It's just about what works. Okay. And when you're in an argument, when you're confronting your partner, when you're confronting your child, when you're passionate and hurt and upset and angry, those are all wonderful things if they're used to get to the goal. But when they're used in a way that just escalates the situation, then nobody gets heard and nothing productive happens. And by the way, if I don't know if you guys can hear it, my husband's down the hall and he's laughing about, if I would never tell anybody not to get upset. That is a crazy thing that would never come out of my mouth, because I can't live it. I get upset about stuff all the time. But when I'm at my best is when I can harness it to get me what I want. Okay? And the way to do that is to make sure that things don't spin out of control. And the way that we do that is to de-escalate. The way that we do that is to breathe. The way that we do that is to pause before we speak, pause before we act. Ask yourself, is this going, if I do this thing right here, right now, is it going to get me to my goal, or is it going to make my goal less attainable? And if it's going to make your goal less attainable, then I just say, just stop and think about it a moment. But that's part of the problem when situations get escalated, is we're not thinking, we're acting. And we actually need to be doing both. Okay? So hopefully you found that helpful. Hopefully that did not come across as condescending, because that's not the way it was meant. It was really meant about, this is what works. This is how we make progress. And yes, being passionate, going out and claiming what you want, absolutely 100%. It's not what you're doing, it's how you're doing it. And that doesn't mean that you're giving in any way, shape, or form. It just means I'm using the skills that work. So again, hopefully everything's going to move forward. We're all going to move towards our goal in a way that is supportive and in a way that is productive. And until next week, stay loving.